This is an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our Daily Dose podcast, covering all about day-to-day global affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
Hello and good evening to everyone joining us from Sydney and around the world. And welcome again to today's special Wednesday's Daily Dose podcast, where we talk about global economy and business. And today we have got a very special topic and a very special guest as usual. The special topic is related to the travel industry being badly hit by the Delta variant. And I know that this has been under discussion for quite some time. So I thought that it's a good day to discuss about this topic. And to discuss about this topic, I have got a special guest, as I just told you, the brand ambassador of Ultimate Global Podcast, Shubham. Hello, Shubham, again.
Thank you so much, Saurabh, for having me. Always a pleasure.
Great. Now, I think we all know about the travel industry, even without doing any kind of reading or research. I'm sure that most of the people are quite fed up of when the travel industry is going to open up. When can we travel to different countries around the world? And when we were thinking that travel industry is about to open up, there came another variant called Delta variant in March and April. And that actually took the industry down again, isn't it, Shubham?
Oh, definitely. Like, least when you were expecting that everything should be okay, that's when you came. And the thing is that it hasn't just like we are here in Sydney and we're thinking about Australia not opening borders. Even the countries that open the borders face a lot of problems. And overall, if you see over 2020 and 2021, it is expected that the global loss of the travel industry would sum up to approximately $4 trillion, which surpasses a lot of the GDPs of bigger economies in the world at the moment. So it is a big issue that face. But the question is that how long is that going to sustain again? Is it right now? Will it be okay when the borders open? Or for how long will it take for the global tourism industry, travel and tourism industry, to get back to where they were earlier, pre-COVID?
Absolutely. And even if you look at some of the key numbers, I was listening to an interview by Julia Simpson, who is appointed as the new CEO of WTTC, and I'm sure you must have also read about that. WTTC is the World Travel and Tourism Council, and what she was stating are those key numbers. So she has joined as the new CEO, and she was setting her short-term and long-term goals. And what happens whenever a new CEO joins the company, you have those visionary targets. And she was talking about the previous numbers, stating that in 2019 there were about 334 million jobs in the travel and tourism sector, and the contribution of this sector to the global GDP was $9.2 trillion. And now, after the pandemic, it has halved. It has got down by 50%. And we have almost lost 62 million jobs in the economy overall. So that really tells us the entire story of this industry. And it's so important for us to revive back this industry so that we can get back those jobs, because it's not only related to the airline sector, but it also links to those inner sectors of hotel, hospitality, which creates more job opportunities around the world.
No, definitely, Saurabh. When we look at the travel industry, we often just look at, okay, this is somewhere we want to go to, but there are so many things that are attached to it, right? When you think about traveling, you think about your travel. The transportation, the first thing that comes to your mind is any kind of transportation, be it rail or flights. But when it comes to international travel, flights are the main ones. Apart from that, you look at accommodations. How does that work? But related to those accommodations, there are so many ancillary industries that have been affected. Now, where do the basic necessities that they require when you move into an accommodation, the basic things that you require, right? Let's say the laundry facilities, some of them are outsourced, those have been affected by that, or other things. Now we look at the major segments that have been affected are also related to If we look very critically, the major ones that have been affected are things like the ones that spend a lot of money, high spenders, right? Like international travel, long hauls between travels, or business travel events. Those are the ones that have been affected the most when it comes to raising that money. A huge chunk of that money that was raised, that was coming under the travel and tourism industry, has been affected by that. So we need to look
Absolutely.
at these things as well when we talk about the travel industry. Now, I was reading a report 2 weeks ago saying that a lot of the major companies in the world have decided to cut short on the travel and business expenses. Now we need to think, how is that going to affect the travel industry in the future again? When they are giving an estimate as to, okay, by 2024 or 2025, this thing would be okay. Is it actually going to be okay? What do you think about that?
No, absolutely. And, uh, just continuing with the arguments that you just raised, it is also related to this thing that the business world is now predicting that the travel which was happening related to the businesses, a lot of travel was happening because of the companies wanting the employees to travel from one place to another place. Now, after Zoom replacing a lot of meetings, and a lot of meetings are now happening online, and COVID-19 has in fact given a simulation for how an online company might look like, or how an online company where people are sitting in different countries might work. And it has worked pretty successful. It has been quite successful across the countries. But what it has done is it has given also a validation to this argument that the business travel is going to be reduced in the coming few years. And also, this will reduce the fact that we are going to another city just for the fact that the company is calling us. It will be more of a travel on with our family and friends, because as you know that no matter how many Zoom meetings or how many online meetings you might have, but you still have those desires to have at least one annual trip with your family and friends. If you can travel within your country, you can travel to another place. And that's why I think this industry has definitely got a bright future, because this is in the human DNA. You cannot replace a human to human interaction by an online meeting. They might be a successful tool temporarily, but I think replacing it on a permanent basis and making it a part of our day-to-day life, it's not possible, because unless and until you don't move out of your countries, you don't move out of your place and travel to different places, explore those things, because that's what makes human beings explore about new places, isn't it?
No, definitely, Saurabh. When we talk about travel, there are two different kinds of travel we can look at, right? One is leisure and one is business travel. So what you're talking about is leisure. Definitely, everyone, like, we are but humans, right? We love social interaction, we love exploring places, but again, for business, is that really important now? That's the question. Now, when a major part of the expenditure in these luxury hotels or luxury places that you go to comes from these business travelers, and they're the ones who are cutting down the budget, how much of it is going to be affected? Even if you see a trend now that even though international travel was very restricted in the past 2 years, domestic travel boomed. People were exploring their own countries. And specifically in regions such as the Asia Pacific, it grew phenomenally. Like, there was no comparison. It almost grew by 50%. If you looked at the World Tourism Organization of the United Nations, they've given out those stats. And we can't ignore those stats because that has happened. Even for us living in Australia and Sydney, we saw like the government was funding money, like they fed the money into the economy for us to move and travel within the economy and to circulate that money. Right. So these things will keep on happening. Now the thing is that we need to figure out which one would you prefer more. Is it the domestic travel or the international travel again?
Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about, that at some point of time you will have to open up the borders. And as you know that United States, countries like United States, UK, most of the South Asian countries have been quite open in doing that, Though I feel that the South Asian countries still lack some sort of strategy at the top level, because we see the restrictions are open, nobody's following anything, in spite of very low vaccination rates. Coming out from America and UK, I can still feel that they have got some sort of strategy backing their decisions when they say that by November 2021, we will be opening back the borders again for the international travelers once they are vaccinated. So only those international travelers who are vaccinated, who have got those double jabs into their arms, can travel to the countries. But again, if even if they have got some symptoms, those flights are able to record their contact numbers and email IDs. I think yesterday only I was discussing with Joshua related to contact tracing and how these contact tracers have played a major role in acting as a very important frontline workers. In addition to the doctors and nurses, whenever we talk about frontline workers in health, we mean to say that the doctors and the nurses who are wearing those clothes inside the ICU, obviously, that is the toughest job. But these contact tracers, finding the links of transmission of virus between one person to another person, it's so hard, and once it crosses beyond your control, it's almost difficult to track your.
Definitely. So if you look at it that way, that contract tracing does play a major role, but the problem is that to what extent can you trace? Now, every day we see that these many cases are coming. Not all of them. It cannot be traced, right? It can only be traced when the numbers are countable. Now, for Delta variant, you wouldn't even know for a week or so. You might not even display those symptoms, and yet you could be a carrier, right? What about those? And the problem is that for every person who's willing to follow the rules and regulations, there are five others who don't want to. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in a developed country or an underdeveloped country or a developing country. And we have seen that from our own eyes. There have been rallies where people are talking about their rights being taken by imposing a mandatory vaccination, right? But if they're going out in the rallies, they are also taking away the rights of the people who want to take the vaccination and live a free life, right? Because the more people are there on the street, the lesser the chances for the borders to open. It's as simple as that. But again, it is my opinion, because this is always going to be a controversial topic when we talk about freedom to take that vaccination or not. Well, on one side, if you are willing to take that vaccination, you're okay. But if you're rallying out and saying that, okay, I do not want to take that vaccination, I'm bringing 100 others with me saying that, okay, I'm not going to take this vaccination. Now you're taking away the freedom from others. So we cannot really comment as to whether it is all right or is it not. But again, that will also affect the travel industry to a huge extent.
Yep, and I think that's also affected the confidence that investors have in the travel industry. In the month of February and March, when the investors who are keeping a track on the different stocks, they were thinking that maybe this is the time when we can start investing, because the consumer confidence is increasing. The vaccinations are now clearer to the countries. They are getting more affordable, more accessible, and there seems to be a clear plan in the coming months. So the consumer confidence will increase. But unfortunately, they did not evaluate the future variants coming, such as the Delta variant and the other variants, which have now made them think that unless and until most of the countries are not vaccinated to at least 60-70%, it's very hard for them to think of beyond or of investing in those companies, because it's so important for them to invest in the right stocks, as they are spending a lot of money in a particular company.
No, absolutely. Like even when you look at these investors making those trades and choosing the right stock, like you said, that it is very important. Uncertainty has become very unpredictable, right? Like there were mechanisms in place based on historical data where you could use that to predict, okay, these are certain trends that would follow, right? And based on those trends at times, we used to make those investments. Now, a sudden disruption of data has happened with the variants. And even bigger companies are finding it difficult to understand how can these disruptions be again be analyzed and see where to make those investments and what changes they need to make either in the supply chain or whatever it is that can help them in the future if something like this happens again. And it's difficult to do that. Like you said, it is not a cakewalk when okay you go there, you analyze the data based on certain things. Now the basis of analyzing the data has completely changed altogether.
Absolutely.
And this also reminds me that when we talk about these data analytics and businesses in the travel and tourism industry as well, most of the ones that have been heavily affected are the small and medium sized industries, right? Or small businesses that have been probably, let's say, for example, a coffee shop or a cafe right there, or even a small restaurant which is there, or a home delivery. All of these home kitchens, these are the ones that have been majorly affected by those. So,
Yep.
and you can't even imagine how much of a revenue loss that might pile up to in the long run.
Yep, and we already have those stats. I think you also shared those stats, but for people who might be joining us a bit later on, if you look at the numbers, the key statistics show us that the consumers in this year from January to August, how much they have been spending in domestic flights now. If you look at the example of United States, just one country, they have been spending $38 billion from January to August 2021, which is a 30% fall from 2019, which is the pre-COVID-19 period. And I think similarly, if you research on other countries as well, it might vary slightly, but it will remain more or less the same, barring few of the countries like Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore, where it might show a bigger dip, more than 30%, because of the fact that Australia has not even opened the borders since March last year. And I think I was just coming to this point of Australia, New Zealand, and countries like this, which have been more conservative in opening up their borders, because in the near future, it's very important for these economies like Australia, New Zealand, Singapore. They depend highly on the tourism sector, the hospitality sector, the international education sector. And once you open those borders, it's going to boom back again. And that's what most of the industries might be waiting for.
Again, when we talk about education, tourism, and travel, now these are all related somewhere to the travel and tourism industry as well, right? And given that Australia hasn't really opened borders for the past 2 years, a major chunk of the student population that was coming to Australia are now diverted to Canada and UK and states, and that has majorly happened. Now, those people are not going to leave their studies and come back to Australia flying. They'll have to find different ways now. And that did create a lot of the tourism, they added value, a lot of value to the tourism sector as well. And these things are somewhat irreplaceable. But again, like I said, um, it is one thing to predict it, and it is another to make sure that those uncertainties are also taken into account, which is very, very difficult.
And definitely, this discussion cannot be fully completed without talking about this new terminology called vaccine passport. We all know about the vaccine passports and how these are now becoming a new trending names in the travel and tourism industry. We know about a couple of countries who have started doing that, and what they are doing is probably having that QR code or some sort of proof in your passport which suggests that you have been vaccinated so you can travel around the world. But the bigger question has also been as to whether these new tricks or techniques used by countries are meeting the standards set by WHO to make sure that actually the tourists who are traveling are on the same level in terms of the vaccination they have had. So I think vaccine passports is going to be an interesting phenomena in the coming 1 year if we have to travel between countries, isn't it, Shubham?
Definitely, without a doubt. I mean, it's already in place, like you said. So there's no looking back. You have to follow it. If you want to travel, you have to abide by those rules. So there's no two minds about it that they are no more a thing about the future or the past. It's like it is the thing of today.
Yep. Absolutely. And because, that's what we have been sharing in the last couple of minutes, that otherwise it's very difficult for the countries to open up the borders. And it's going to be a mix of initiatives. The people need to get vaccinated as soon as possible. The countries need to be making sure that the vaccines are affordable in all the countries. And the WHO and organizations like these might have to come together to make sure that there is an affordable and accessible way of providing vaccines to different countries around the world, not going into any kind of vaccine politics or protecting your vaccine nationalism into it. And that is going to be very important in the coming few days, because otherwise, it will be very hard for the travel industry to make a strong comeback, isn't
Without
it?
a doubt, Saurabh.
Shubham.
Without a doubt, Saurabh, definitely. The thing is that if you look at all the reasons behind why the travel and tourism industry has taken such a big hit, is that one major factor that played a role was that there was a lack of coordinated responses among countries, right? Now, when that happens, you cannot blame any country for taking different steps. There should have been there is United Nations when where the companies where the countries could meet and select a common pathway as well, which they could have used for this. Well, sitting at this level, this is what we can say, right? But it's geopolitics, and again, something or the other will happen that does not allow them to sit together and take a common approach towards vaccinations or building towards the travel and tourism industry, and that's majorly affected this industry.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this industry unfolds in the coming few weeks and the coming few months. We also hope that once the travel sector opens up, we can travel to our country. Both of us are here as an international student in Australia, so I would love to travel back to India. I've been watching some dreams to go back to my country for a couple of months now. So, and I think similarly, more people might be thinking of traveling to Europe, to Canada. And obviously some people might have some family plans to travel with their families. Those, I'm sure they are excited for 2022 and hoping to make sure that there is no new variant coming after this as transmissible as the Delta variant, and we can start traveling to and getting back to the life before COVID, because that's the question everybody is asking: when can we get back to the same kind of life before COVID? Obviously, I think that 100% normalcy might take some time, but at least some sort of normalcy should come in the coming days.
Well, it's a hard thing to say. I think we've already adjusted to some kind of new normal, right? And that is here to stay, I believe. It would be difficult for to think that, like, it would be absurd to think that we are going to go back to everything how it was before. So many things have changed, the norms have changed in our daily lives, but all we can say is that hope is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. And with this positivity, we would like to end this Daily Divorce podcast and hope for the international tourism sector to open up, international travel sector to open up, and best wishes to all the investors who are taking the risk to invest in this sector. I think that still it's a good time to invest because the travel sector is quite down at the moment. But we'll have to carefully predict that data and make sure that, is this the dip we are looking for? Are there any further dips coming forward? So be very careful while analyzing your data, looking at all kinds of trends. Just a key tip for all those investors. I'm not an investor, but looking at those key trends, that's what it suggests, that you have to look at these unpredictable situations and not come to any conclusion, because we are living in a very unpredictable world in 2021 and 2022 and ahead. So hoping to see you, Shubham, again in one of our daily dose, and we might discuss about different industries in the coming weeks, such as the manufacturing industry, the airlines industry, and digging it a bit deeper to provide more insights for the audience.
Absolutely, sir. Always a pleasure, like I said. Thank you so much.